Have you ever pondered how the rhythm of life changes as you age, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? One day, you're immersed in the noise and motion of family gatherings, work obligations, and friendships that seemed eternal. The next, you find yourself sitting quietly on your porch, watching the birds, sipping coffee, and realizing something profound. You've started to avoid people. And what's more, it feels right. At first, it seems strange. You wonder, is something wrong with me? Am I becoming antisocial? Am I just getting old and bitter? But the answer I've found is no. It's not bitterness, it's clarity, it's peace. And more importantly, it's self-respect. I'm over 70 now. I've walked through decades of life with open arms and an open heart. I've welcomed people in, given generously of my time and energy, and stayed longer than I should have in conversations and connections that no longer gave me joy. But something changed as I entered this stage of life. The world got louder, more demanding, and I realized I don't have the energy or the desire to be everything to everyone anymore. Avoiding people doesn't mean shutting out the world. It means filtering it. At this age, I've earned the right to choose peace over pressure, authenticity over obligation, depth over small talk. There's a myth that elders become lonely because they step back from social circles. But what if we're not lonely? What if we're finally at peace? What if we're not avoiding people out of sadness, but because we've learned something younger folks haven't figured out yet? I no longer chase the phone calls that never come or mourn invitations that never arrive. I don't keep toxic people around just because they're family. I've realized that my peace is more valuable than their expectations. 1. Time is no longer abundant. When you're younger, time feels endless. You make plans years in advance. You waste hours without guilt. You stay in relationships that go nowhere. Say yes to things you don't enjoy and assume there will always be another day to fix what's broken. But once you cross into your 70s, that illusion disappears. Time no longer feels infinite. It feels precious, limited, and irreplaceable. At this stage of life, every morning matters. Every hour holds weight. And because of that, we begin to choose differently. We say no more often. We walk away from conversations that don't inspire us. We avoid people who drain our energy. Not because we're unkind, but because we finally understand that we don't have time to waste on things that don't bring peace, joy, or meaning. This shift in how we see time doesn't come from fear, it comes from wisdom. We've lived long enough to know what matters and what doesn't. That's why many of us seem to withdraw from social obligations. We're not being distant, we're just being deliberate. Every minute counts now, and we want to spend it where it truly matters. Does this resonate with you? If so, comment with the number 1. And speaking of where we invest our time, it's not just about the minutes on the clock, it's about the people we choose to spend them with. That leads to something even more personal. Why relationships, once vital, begin to shift in ways we never expected. 2. Relationships change over time. As we grow older, we begin to see relationships through a different lens. In our younger years, we often felt responsible for holding everything together, checking in with everyone, remembering birthdays, attending every event, and doing our best to keep the peace. But over time, we realized that not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some fade gently, others end abruptly, and a few evolve into something deeper. What we once saw as essential begins to feel optional, even burdensome. At this stage in life, we no longer have the energy for one-sided relationships. We crave connection that feels mutual, not draining. We value simplicity, honesty, and presence over performance. We stop chasing people who don't show up. We stop explaining ourselves to those who never really listened. It's not about bitterness, it's about clarity. We've learned that real relationships don't demand constant effort to survive. They flow naturally, and they give as much as they take. This understanding brings peace, but also sadness. We miss those who once felt close. We feel the distance growing with family members or friends we used to lean on. But we also feel stronger for recognizing what's real and choosing to nurture only those bonds that still bring warmth and meaning. Have you noticed your own circle shrinking but deepening? If so, comment with the number 1. And as those relationships shift, something even more fragile begins to surface. The question of who we can truly trust. The answer isn't always simple. Let's explore that next. 3. Trust becomes more complicated. As we age, we come to understand that trust is not as simple as we once believed. In our younger years, we gave it freely, believing the best in others, assuming that kindness would be returned and that loyalty meant something permanent. But over time, life teaches us otherwise. We've all experienced disappointment from people we never expected. Friends we counted on drifted away. Family members stopped calling. Promises were broken, sometimes without explanation. These moments leave marks, and they change how we offer our trust moving forward. Now, in our 70s, we've become more cautious, not because we're bitter, but because we've learned to protect ourselves. We don't welcome everyone into our hearts anymore. We ask more questions. We listen more closely to our instincts. We know that some people are more interested in what they can take than in who we are. That kind of lesson doesn't come quickly, but once it arrives, it's unforgettable. We've also learned that trusting ourselves is just as important as trusting others. When something doesn't feel right, we honor that feeling. We walk away sooner. We set boundaries more firmly. It may seem like we're closing off, but really we're just making space for the people who truly deserve our trust. Can you relate to this new way of protecting your peace? If so, comment with the number 1. And once trust becomes more fragile, something else starts to feel unfamiliar too. The world around us begins to change in ways that are hard to ignore. Let's talk about that next. 4. The world feels different now. There's a moment in life, often around this age, when you pause, look around, and realize the world doesn't feel the same anymore. It's not just about technology or how fast things move, it's deeper than that. There used to be a warmth in everyday life. Neighbors waved from their porches. People stopped by just to talk. Families sat together for dinner without phones on the table. Now everything feels more rushed, more distant, more disconnected. People rarely visit. Conversations happen through screens. Even when we're together, it sometimes feels like no one's really present. The noise of modern life, constant notifications, breaking news, social media drowns out the kind of stillness that once gave life meaning. It's hard not to feel like something precious has been lost. Relationships seem thinner. Values feel different, and the sense of community we once relied on has faded. This change can feel lonely, but it also brings clarity. We see more clearly what we want to hold on to. Genuine conversations, true connection, and the slower, more meaningful pace that today's world often forgets. That's why many of us pull back, not because we're stuck in the past, but because we miss the realness that once surrounded us. Have you felt this shift in the world around you? If so, comment with the number 1. And when the world begins to feel too loud, too rushed, and too disconnected, we often find peace in something we once feared: being alone. But what if solitude isn't loneliness at all? Let's talk about that next. 5. Solitude isn't loneliness. There was a time when I feared being alone. In my younger years, solitude felt like isolation, something to be avoided, a sign that something was missing. But now, with the wisdom that comes from age, I've come to see solitude in a different light. It's not emptiness, it's fullness. It's not about what's missing, it's about what's finally present. In solitude, I've discovered a peace I never found in crowded rooms or noisy gatherings. Sitting quietly with a cup of tea, hearing the wind rustle through the trees, watching birds at the feeder, these moments, though small, are deeply meaningful. They allow me to breathe, to reflect, and to simply exist without pressure or performance. I'm no longer trying to impress anyone or keep up with anyone. I'm just being, and that's more than enough. Solitude gives space for gratitude. It helps me look back on my life with appreciation rather than regret. It helps me find joy in small rituals, comfort in silence, and strength in stillness. I don't avoid people out of bitterness. I choose solitude because it brings me closer to myself. Have you come to enjoy your own company in ways you never expected? If so, comment with the number 1. And once you've made peace with solitude, another truth begins to rise, the real reason so many of us begin to avoid others entirely. It's not what you think, and it just might change the way you see everything. Let's go deeper. 6. Why I avoid people now. At this stage in life, avoiding people isn't about holding grudges or shutting the world out. It's about protecting peace. After decades of giving, helping, explaining, and compromising, I've come to understand the true cost of constantly being available to everyone. It took years of being drained by one-sided relationships and silenced in conversations that never made space for me to realize this truth. Not every connection is worth keeping. I used to think saying yes to everyone made me kind, but kindness without boundaries only leads to exhaustion. Over the years, I stayed in situations that chipped away at my spirit simply because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Now I see things more clearly. I avoid people who bring negativity, who thrive on drama, who never ask how I'm doing, and who assume my time and energy are endless. I avoid being pulled into spaces that make me feel small or invisible. Avoiding people now means choosing calm over chaos, presence over performance, and truth over obligation. It's not about being cold, it's about being careful with the time I have left. I've earned the right to be selective, and in that I've found peace I never knew I was allowed to have. Have you also reached a point where avoiding certain people feels like self-respect? If so, comment with the number 1. But as we make these choices and step back, a question lingers in the quiet. Are we the only ones who feel this way, or is this something others silently carry too? Let's uncover that next. 7. Does this sound familiar? Sometimes I wonder if others feel it too. The quiet pull away from the noise, the fading desire to be part of everything, the growing need for simplicity. When I look back at my younger years, I see someone who tried hard to meet expectations, to please others, to be reliable and available no matter what. I wanted to be everything to everyone, but in doing so, I often lost sight of myself. Now, I don't apologize for needing space. I don't explain why I skipped the gathering or let the phone ring. Come to understand that many people my age are making the same quiet decisions, stepping away from relationships that feel heavy, saying no to conversations that leave us empty, and choosing quality over quantity in every area of life. We're not withdrawing out of sadness, we're simply choosing what finally feels right. It's a transition that catches you off guard. It feels like you're shedding a part of who you once were, but in truth, you're stepping into who you were always meant to be. And if it feels unfamiliar, know this: you're not alone. More of us are walking this path than you might think. Have you found yourself quietly making these same changes? If so, comment with the number 1. And once we recognize this shared experience, the final realization becomes clear. This isn't the end of the road. In many ways, it's just the beginning of something more meaningful. Let's explore what that looks like. 8. Embracing this chapter. At 70, something shifts, not just in your body, but in your heart, your mind, and your spirit. You stop chasing the things you once thought mattered. You stop trying to keep up. You stop needing to prove anything. Instead, you begin to truly live, not for others, not for approval, but for yourself. This chapter of life is not a closing, it's an opening, a quiet, powerful beginning. You find joy in the morning light pouring through your window. You find meaning in a simple walk, a gentle laugh, a shared silence. You start choosing peace over pressure. You stop saying yes out of guilt. You feel freedom in saying no without guilt. The world may see slowing down as giving up, but you know better. Slowing down means becoming more intentional. It means living deeply, not quickly. It means being present, not just busy. You reflect more, not with regret, but with gratitude. Every joy, every mistake, every lesson, it all brought you here. And here in this slower, simpler chapter, you find something most people spend their whole lives searching for: contentment. Have you started embracing this season of life with more acceptance and peace? If so, comment with the number 1. Because after all the years of noise, effort, and expectation, there's one final truth that becomes impossible to ignore. It's not how much you do, but how deeply you feel it. Let's bring it all together. Closing thoughts. Living fully on your own terms. There comes a moment, quiet, gentle, and unmistakable, when you finally understand what this stage of life is truly about. It's not about doing more. It's not about having more. It's not even about being more. It's about being enough just as you are. After decades of noise, responsibilities, expectations, and emotional ups and downs, you begin to realize that peace isn't found in the crowd. It's found within. Avoiding people after 70 isn't a sign of giving up on life. It's a powerful, conscious decision to protect your energy, your heart, and your well-being. You've spent much of your life giving to others. Now you've earned the right to give back to yourself. The silence you once feared has become your sanctuary. The solitude that once felt lonely now feels sacred. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't have to explain it to anyone. You don't owe anyone an apology for choosing quiet over chaos, calm over conflict, or depth over distraction. The world may expect you to keep pushing, to keep proving, to keep performing, but you've already done enough. Now, you get to live on your own terms. This chapter isn't the end. It's the most honest, authentic, and peaceful part of your journey. It's where you let go of what no longer serves you. It's where you stop chasing and start savoring. It's where you finally breathe, deeply, freely, and without fear. And in this chapter, you're not alone. There are countless others walking this same quiet path, choosing themselves for the first time in a long time. If any part of this journey has spoken to your heart, let it be a reminder. You are not just aging, you are evolving. So here's to this season of life, to the wisdom it brings, to the peace it offers, and most of all, to the freedom of living fully, deeply, and unapologetically, one intentional moment at a time. These lessons are meant to inspire you to live fully and authentically. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life. Let's support each other on this journey toward embracing these truths. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.